Rahul and Arjun, two inseparable friends, had just completed their Class 10 exams. The air was thick with anticipation as they stepped out of the examination hall, their minds already drifting towards summer vacations and carefree days. But fate had other plans. On a misty evening, Rahul and Arjun found themselves back at Dow Hill School. They had missed the last bus home, and the caretaker, Mr. Das, had reluctantly agreed to let them spend the night in the deserted school building. The corridors echoed with their footsteps as they wandered through the dimly lit hallways. The school seemed frozen in time, desks covered in dust, chalkboards bearing faded equations, and the scent of old books lingering in the air. Why did we have to choose this creepy place? Rahul whispered, glancing nervously at the portraits of stern-looking headmasters lining the walls. It's just for one night, Arjun replied, trying to sound brave. But even he couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that clung to the atmosphere. They settled into an abandoned classroom, the same room where the headless boy was rumored to appear. The moon peeked through the tattered curtains, casting eerie shadows on the floor. What if he shows up? Rahul asked, half-jokingly. Don't be ridiculous, Arjun scoffed. Ghosts aren't real. But as the clock struck midnight, the room grew colder. The air seemed to thicken, and the whispers began. Rahul. Arjun. The boys froze. The voice was faint, barely audible. They exchanged wide-eyed glances. Who's there? Rahul called out, his voice trembling. No response. Maybe it's Mr. Das playing a prank, Arjun suggested, but deep down, he knew it wasn't true. The whispers intensified. The moonlight danced on the blackboard, revealing cryptic symbols etched into its surface. The chalk seemed to move on its own, spelling out words. Remember the curse. Remember the headless boy. We need to leave, Rahul stammered, pushing his chair back. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if an invisible force held it shut. We're trapped, Arjun whispered, panic creeping into his eyes. Rahul heard faint footsteps outside the door. The footsteps grew louder, echoing down the empty hallway. Rahul peeked through the keyhole, expecting to see a caretaker or a stray dog. Instead, he saw nothing but darkness, a void that seemed to swallow the moonlight. The footsteps drew closer, and Rahul's heart pounded in his chest. He whispered to Amit, Do you hear that? Amit strained his ears. It's just the wind, he said, but his voice trembled. The footsteps stopped abruptly, and the door swung open. The room was flooded with an otherworldly glow, revealing a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. Rahul's breath caught in his throat. The figure was tall, its head bowed as if burdened by an invisible weight. But there was no head, just a neck that ended in a jagged stump. The headless boy stepped into the room, his footsteps silent on the wooden floor. His eyes were hollow sockets, and his spectral form seemed to flicker like a dying candle. Rahul and Amit pressed themselves against the wall, unable to tear their eyes away from the ghastly sight. What do you want? Rahul whispered, his voice barely audible. The headless boy raised a fingerless hand, pointing toward the window. Outside, the mist thickened, swallowing the moon. The wind rattled the window panes, and the room seemed to shrink around them. Amit tugged at Rahul's sleeve. We have to leave, he said urgently. But Rahul hesitated. The headless boy's purpose was unclear. Was he a guardian or a malevolent force? The shadows shifted, revealing a torn school uniform, the same one Rahul's father had worn decades ago. The boy's spectral form seemed to pulse with rage. Suddenly, the headless boy lunged at them. His fingers, cold as death, wrapped around Rahul's throat. Amit screamed, but the boy's grip tightened. Rahul gasped for air, his vision blurring. The room spun, and he felt consciousness slipping away. Desperation fueled Rahul's survival instinct. He kicked, clawed, and managed to break free. Amit grabbed a wooden chair, swinging it at the headless boy. The chair passed through him, but the impact sent the boy stumbling backward. Run! Rahul gasped, and they sprinted down the hallway. The shadows seemed to writhe, whispering secrets Rahul couldn't comprehend. The headless boy pursued them, his footsteps echoing like a death knell. They reached the main staircase, but the steps crumbled beneath their weight. Amit fell, his ankle twisted. Rahul dragged him toward the basement, the only escape route left. The boy's spectral form closed in, and Rahul could almost feel the jagged stump of his neck against his skin. In the basement, the ancient well stood, its black waters beckoning. Rahul hesitated. The boy's rage seemed to intensify. The shadows retreated, revealing the boy's face, the face Rahul had seen in old photographs. His eyes held not sorrow, but fury. "Your name?" Rahul gasped, his voice raw. The boy's voice echoed from the void. "Karen." Rahul understood. Karen had been wronged, betrayed by those who should have protected him. The well held the truth, the key to his restless spirit. Rahul and Amit peered into the abyss, and the shadows receded further. Karen's malevolence surged. He lunged at Rahul, but Amit pushed him aside. Karen's spectral form merged with Amit, who collapsed, unconscious. Rahul stumbled back, horror etched on his face. The well whispered secrets of betrayal, of a dark pact, of a curse that bound the school. Rahul knew the truth now. Dow Hill School was haunted, not by one ghost, but by many, their stories woven into its very stones. And so, the legend of Dow Hill School continued, a place where shadows whispered, and the headless boy sought vengeance. Visitors still hear the footsteps, still glimpse the boy in the moonlight. But they never stayed long enough to uncover the truth.